Hi students, welcome to SPSVERSITY. Okay. In the previous session we discussed about the ecological food chain, the food web, ecological pyramids and the energy flow. So when you come to ecological succession, what is meant by ecological succession? So ecological succession is an predictable and orderly change. Orderly means a sequential change. So in this orderly change in the sequence, that is the composition and structure of community. Okay. So this succession may start from unoccupied habitat or by some form of disturbance of an existing community. Okay. So in ecological change, in ecological succession, there is a change by which in the structure of and composition of community, and it may start from new unoccupied habitat or by due to some form of disturbance. So this is called ecological succession. And in this ecological succession, whatever the sequence of communities, so this sequence of communities which come in a particular area, it is called seer. So it is called seer. So the seer is the entire sequence of a community that successively change in a given area. And in this seer, if it is in fresh water, that is called hydroseer. If it is on rock, it is called lithoseer. If it is on sand, it is called samoseer. If it is on saline, that is saline bodies or saline, it is haloseer. If it is on dry area where water availability is very less, it is called xeroseer. So there are different seeral communities like hydroseer, communities in fresh water, lithoseer, community on rock, samoseer, community on sand, haloseer, community on saline, that is body, xeroseer, the community on dry area. So here, in this succession process, there are basically two types of succession. So one is primary succession and another one is secondary succession. So what is this primary succession? So it begins with the primary succession begins on area that there has not been previously occupied by a community. So previously there is no community at all in that. Okay. Like newly exposed rock or sand surface, or a lava flow, or a glacial till, or a newly formed lake, where previously there is no community at all. So the species which come and inhabit this without this space, they are called pioneer species. So the pioneer means the first one which will occupy this community. That area, it is called pioneer species. So primary succession means it begins from a place where there is no community at all previously. It may be a newly formed lake, or it may be newly exposed rock, or a lava flow or glacial tilts. And this primary succession, as it starts from a newly one, that is, okay. So it takes more time. So more time means it takes thousands of years, not 1 or 2. It takes thousands of years. Okay. For establishment on this place where newly formed, where there is no community previously, it will take more time. It takes thousands of years. And it is a very slow process. So it is a very slow process. So primary succession starts on a place where there is no community at all previously occupied by any community. That's why it requires more time and it is slow. The process is slow. To this quite opposite, that is if you take here, that is, here you can see it takes hundreds of years. Like the pioneer communities means like the bare rock on which lichens, small plants, lichens, perennial herbs, grasses, shrubs, shade intolerant trees, The final one, that is the final community which is stabilized, it is called climax community. It is called climax. That is, the initial one, it is called pioneer community, and the final one is called climax community. And between these are called intermediate stages. So between these, it is called intermediate stages. Okay. And when you come to secondary succession, what is this secondary succession? We have studied about primary succession. What is this secondary succession? So this secondary succession, its community development starts in an area from which a community was there previously, but it was removed. Okay. Like an abandoned crop field where there is no cultivation for a lot of years. Cut over forest, or the place where we can see the forest fire. Due to this, the complete community is eradicated. So previously there was a community, but it was removed due to various factors like the cut over forest, the fire or natural disasters. It was removed. Okay. So the pioneer species in this are grasses, wildflowers, algae, etc. Okay. So like this, it is the secondary succession. Okay. So here you can see an abandoned crop field. Okay. In the first year only, the remains of the corn plants are seen. You can see during the second year, the grasses have invaded the area. By the fifth year, that is, the grasses look more mature and sedges have joined them. Till more total plants. And by 20 years, you can see the juniper trees are mature and there are also beech and maple trees, which addition to blackberry shrubs. So that means this is initially it looks like this. Gradually the grasses, the pioneer species. Next the shrubs, the sedges, the shrubs, the trees, which are final climax community. So this secondary succession, this process, it takes place, that is previously where it is found, it takes less time. When compared with the primary succession, it takes less time and the process is fast when compared with the primary succession. So the fast process and within less time the process takes place. Whereas when you come to primary succession, it takes hundreds of years. And during this succession, there is a lot of change in the biomass also. Okay. from one community to other community, there is a lot of change in the biomass of the communities also increases gradually. Okay, so there is a lot of biomass change. So here you can see in this there is difference between primary succession and secondary succession. So primary succession is a place where there is no community has existed before. But here it is a place where community existed before. Basically here lichens are first. Lichens means the pioneer one. The pioneer species are mostly the lichens. Here the grass, shrubs, weeds, other organisms to appear. So it takes very long time, about 1000 years to reach to climax community. It takes very short time, that is 50 to 100 years for a grassland and 200 years for a clear forest to reach to climax community. So it begins on sand dunes, volcanic islands, lava flows, where it begins on devastated place whereby fire, earthquake, forest cleared by man, that is cut over forests. So it begins from this. So it takes less time and it is more faster than the primary succession. So that's why the secondary succession is faster and takes less time than the primary succession. So whatever it is, the primary or secondary succession, so whatever it is, so there is a change of communities. Okay, from one community in a particular place, there is change of community from time to time. For example, if you see hydraulic succession, hydraulic means it takes place in wetter areas, and there is a succession starts from hydric conditions to mesophytic conditions, ends with a mesophytic condition. Mesophytic means it is called the mesic conditions, it ends with mesic conditions. So initially it starts with water. For example, if you take in a pond, it starts with phytoplanktons, which are producers of pond. Next, submerged plant stage. Next, submerged free floating plant stage, and next is reed swamp stage, and next marshmallow stage, next scrub stage, and final stage is forest. That is the climax community here is the forest, which is a mesic condition, whereas the pioneer is the phytoplankton in a pond. Okay, so here if you see this, that is the hydrosphere, the communities which come, that is it starts with the phytoplankton, submerged free floating, reed swamp stage, marshmallow stage, woodland stage, and forest. The final stage is forest, which is mesophytic. Okay, so here gradually we can see a lot of communities are changing from particular time in this place. So these are different communities, serial communities, which has come into picture when starts in the wetter areas. So whatever it is, whether it starts from hydrosphere or that it starts on xerosphere, that is dry area, the final community is a climax community is the forest community. So here the community is phytoplanktons in the pond. Okay. So here you can see the gradual change in the communities from this. That is, if you see this, the initial stage is phytoplankton. The next, submerged. Free floating, submerged with the free floating. The third one, with free floating leaves. Reed swamp stage, marsh meadow stage, woodland stage, the scrub stage, the final stage, that is forest, the climax community, which is a mesophytic condition. So here Gradually you can see there is a migration of these communities from one to, that is land, from water to land. Okay. So these stages which come, that is, they are called serial communities, and this entire it is called hydroseer, and this entire is called hydroseer. The climax community is the forest, and the pioneer community is the phytoplanktons in the pond. So initially it is occupied by phytoplanktons in the pond, later on submerged. Later on submerged is free floating, reed swamp stage, marsh meadow stage, woodland stage, and scrub stage, and finally the complex stage, forest community. Okay. And when you come to zero succession, so this succession starts on dry areas. So dry area means where water availability is less. So water is very less, and the series of the organism, that is, it starts from xeric conditions and ends with mesic condition. Mesic condition means the forest. So mesic condition means the forest. So it starts with bare rock. The pioneer community is lichens. It starts with lichens. Next, mosses, grasses, perennial grass, shrubs, tall trees. So here you can see a sequence of serial communities which are occupying the, gradually it leads to tall trees, which is a climax community. So which is a climax community. So here you can see the pioneer stage is a lichen stage, crustose lichen stage. Foliose, next stage is foliose lichen stage. Foliose means which are leaf-like expanded. Moss stage means the bryophytes. After the lichens, next it is occupied by bryophytes. Herbaceous stage, next is substage, next is the forest stage, which is a climax community. Okay, where in forest stage is occupied by tall trees. Okay, whether it is a hydroseer or xeroseer, it ends with a, that is a climax community. That is mesophytic conditions, that is the mesophytic conditions, or if we take this, the climax community, that is, it is the mesophytic. Okay, so xerox starts with lichens, ends with, that is the forest stage, where tall trees are present. So here you can see it is a bare rock. So it is a bare rock. On this bare rock, you can see the crustose lichens are inhabited this bare rock. So these crustose lichens will secrete lichenic acid, which leads to the weathering of rocks. So gradually weathering of rocks takes place. And next it is occupied by foliose lichens, the next foliose, and the mosses. And next the substage, and that is the herbaceous stage, the substage, and finally the climax community, that is the forest, which is occupied with tall trees. The forest is occupied with the tall trees. So the forest community is occupied with tall trees. So finally we have come to a climax community with tall trees. You can see in the picture gradual replacement of community one after other. So if you see this zero succession. So initially it starts with bare rock. The pioneer stage is lichens. In this there may be crustose lichens. Next is foliose lichens. Next by, that is grasses, herbage, perennial, next shrubs, next trees, which is the climax community, which takes hundreds of years. So this process takes place hundreds of years to complete the process. Okay. So till now we discussed about the succession, that is ecological succession. In this we discussed about the xerarch, the hydroseed, the xeroseed, the primary succession, secondary succession. So follow us SPSVERSITY on social media. So what xerarch, whatever it is, the succession says, there is a change in communities in a particular given area from time to time. These are not constant. There will be pioneer, there will be intermediate stages, there will be climax communities. The stable one, the final one is climax communities. So now we are going to discuss about nutrient cycling. So what is this nutrient cycling? So in ecosystem, nutrient cycling is one of the major functions, which are also called biogeochemical cycles. So they are also called with other name biogeochemical cycles. Okay. To this soil, the moisture, the temperature regulate the release of nutrients into atmosphere. It depends on different environmental factors: the moisture, the temperature, the soil. So here when you come to standing state, that is the amount of nutrients present. Nutrients means here like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium at a particular time present in a soil, it is called standing state. So standing state means the amount of nutrients present in a soil at a given time, it is called what we call the standing state. So standing state is most particularly about the amount of inorganic nutrients present. So here there are lot of inorganic nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, potassium, like this. And it represents the non-living matter, and it circulates between living and non-living components. It is being regularly depleted and replenished by living matters. Okay. So standing state refers to non-living matter. Okay. And when you come to next one, that is the standing crop. Okay. So the standing crop is an amount of biomass present. Okay. So the amount of biomass present in a particular ecosystem, that is called standing crop. It represents about the living matter present, but here there is no circulation among living matter. So continuous synthesis and consumption of biomass is going on. So there is a difference between the standing state and standing crop. Okay. So इसमें standing state बोले तो inorganic nutrients, standing crop means the living matter. So this is the difference between the standing state and standing crop. Okay. So here when you come to the nutrients like the nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, potassium, like these nutrients. So these nutrients are circulated in ecosystem. They are never lost from this ecosystem. So they are never lost from the ecosystem. They are recycled and again definitely, indefinitely. So they are again recycled. Okay. So when you come to these nutrients, okay, so nutrients are never lost from the ecosystem, but they are recycled time to time and again indefinitely. So there are two types of that is gaseous cycle and sedimentary cycle. Okay. So this is gaseous cycle and sedimentary cycle. So gaseous cycle means the reservoir for this gaseous cycle is atmosphere, whereas sedimentary cycle, the reservoir is the soil. It is the reservoir is the soil. For example, if we take gaseous cycle, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, water cycle, oxygen cycle will come under gaseous cycle. So here if we take nitrogen cycle, the reservoir for nitrogen is atmospheric nitrogen, which occupies about 78%. So how this nitrogen is reaching to atmosphere? By denitrification. So here you can see by denitrification from the soil it reaches. Volcanic actions. By denitrification, volcanic actions, the nitrogen reaches to the soil, that is the atmosphere. Okay. So how this nitrogen will reach, that is used for various processes, that is during lightning and thundering. This is physical nitrogen fixation, by which the nitrates are fixed and reaches to soil. By biological nitrogen fixation, it is biological nitrogen fixation. And this one by blue-green algae in the world, seas and oceans. Okay. So whatever it is, the nitrogen which is present in the atmosphere by various physical and biological means, this nitrogen reaches to soil. Okay. Either through, that is the from this what we call this nitrogen which is taken reaches to soil, it is absorbed by plants. Roots. So from plants it reaches to animals, and when they dead, that is by the death, that is they are converted into, that is the detritus, it is converted into ammonium salts. By gradually next, that is which is the one which is by after ammonifying bacteria, ammonification process, the next process is the nitrification process. Okay. By nitrification, ammonification, okay, and by various process it reaches to soil. So from soil these nutrients are absorbed by plants. Okay. So this is how the nitrogen is utilized in the ecosystem, and this is how the nitrogen reaches to the that is the nitrogen reaches to the atmosphere. Okay. So this is one of the important most the gaseous cycle which operates. Okay. So next come to carbon cycle. So it is one of the gaseous cycle which takes place in the atmosphere. So here if you see the carbon cycle, the reservoir for carbon, that is the carbon dioxide, in the form of carbon dioxide. So how carbon dioxide? By burning fossil fuels, forest, combustion of fuels from vehicles, electricity, heat by various process, respiration and decomposition, it will reach to the atmosphere. And whatever CO2 present in atmosphere, it is used by plants for photosynthesis. Even for formation of calcareous sediments, they will use this, that is this one, that is the carbon dioxide is used, and for photosynthesis of aquatic food chain. So whatever CO2 present in water, it is used for formation of calcareous sediments. It is by different ways, by burning of fossil fuels, the combustion, this all by which it will reach to, the CO2 will reach to atmosphere, and by various methods, photosynthesis, and by formation of calcareous sediments, it is used by the organisms for this. So here you can see in the carbon in which form it is used and in which form it is released. Okay. So here you can see that is decomposition. The plants which die, animals which die, which undergo decomposition process. So due to decomposition process, during decomposition, a lot of steps will take place. Due to decomposition, CO2 is released into atmosphere. So as and when the plants die, that is, the plants die by decomposition, releases into atmosphere. And next, by burning fossil fuels, the carbon is returned to the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. So decomposition, and next, that is by the burning of fossil fuels, and next by respiration, where the CO2 is released into atmosphere. By respiration, CO2 is released. And whatever CO2 present in atmosphere, the plants will use it by the process, that is photosynthesis. Okay. So whenever the plants and animals die, they decompose. Again, the decomposition takes place where they are released into atmosphere. Okay. Even for formation of calcareous sediments, that is calcareous sediments in the oceans, that is CO2 is used. So this is how whatever CO2 present in the atmosphere, it is used by photosynthesis, by formation of calcareous sediments, and various means it is used, and by various means it is released into atmosphere. Okay. So here the reservoir will maintain the balance of input and output. It will maintain the balance of input and output. Okay. So here if you see this, that is about 49% of dry weight of living organisms. If you see the importance of carbon, 49% of dry weight of living organisms is made up of carbon. Okay. So the ocean reserves, the fossil fuels will regulate the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay. So here in living organisms, carbon occupies the major part, that is the 49% of it is occupied, dry weight is occupied by carbon. So whatever carbon dioxide present in atmosphere, it is used by plants for photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is one of the raw material by which the leaves, the photosynthesis process will use. And in plants, even we can see respiration. So by respiration, the CO2 is released into atmosphere. The CO2 is released into atmosphere. Okay. So by respiration, CO2 is released into atmosphere. By photosynthesis, CO2 is taken by plants. Okay. So plants use CO2 like this. Okay. And next, another way by which CO2 reaches to atmosphere, by decomposition process. So decomposition means, that is the processing of dead and decaying matter, where there are many steps like fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification, mineralization. So during this decomposition, many decomposers like bacteria and fungi which play an important role during decomposition. So bacteria and fungi which play an important role in during decomposition. They will release CO2 into atmosphere. So during decomposition, CO2 is released into atmosphere. So here you can see this is the process of decomposition. So like decompose the detritivores where fragmentation is seen. Catabolism in like mineralization, these all process where the CO2 is released into atmosphere. The CO2 is released into atmosphere. Okay. By the decomposition of dead and decaying matter, the CO2 is finally reached to atmosphere. It's finally reached to atmosphere. Okay. So here, gradually due to human activities, lot of CO2 is released into atmosphere. By due to fossil fuels, burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, due to these activities, the what we call the CO2, amount of CO2 is released in the atmosphere is gradually increasing. So here you can see the burning of fossil fuels, okay, like oil and petrol, vehicular pollution, deforestation, cutting of forest, greenhouse gases and fossil fuels, like you can see where the thermal power plants where you use coal as vintage coal, that is CO2 is released in the atmosphere. By vehicular pollution, CO2 is released in the atmosphere. Deforestation, CO2 is released into atmosphere. Okay. So like along with CO2, many other greenhouse gases are released in the atmosphere, which will increase the radiation, that is, which will cause greenhouse effect. So which will cause the greenhouse effect. So here you can see in the picture the greenhouse effect. So this is the deforestation, the process, that is the deforestation process. So due to deforestation, a lot of the CO2 is released into atmosphere. Not only carbon dioxide, along with the carbon dioxide, that is by burning of fossil fuels, 57% of carbon dioxide is released. By deforestation, decomposition of biomass, 17% is released. Along with this one, that is methane, and that is nitrous oxide, 8%. These all are greenhouse gases, CFCs, which constitute 1%. So these all greenhouse gases, majorly the greenhouse gases, the major one is carbon dioxide, which is released into atmosphere, which will cause the greenhouse effect. Okay. So till now we discussed about the gaseous cycle. So the gaseous cycle means we discussed about the nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, where the atmosphere is the reserve. These are called gaseous cycles. And next, when you come to phosphorus cycle. So when you come to phosphorus cycle. So phosphorus is very important constituent of cell membrane. That is cell membrane, nucleic acids, they are made up of phosphorus. So cell membrane, nucleic acids, they are made up of phosphorus. So here you can see the phosphorus which will form, that is one of the important component of the cell membrane. That is, in cell membrane there are phospholipids which will form a major component. Along with the proteins, the cell membrane is having phospholipids. Nucleic acids are made up of, that is, in nucleic acids the nucleotide has one of the component as phosphate. Cellular energy, that is ATP, is having 3 phosphates. Like Phosphorus has major role in our life process, that is cell membrane, nucleic acid, cellular energy, the transfers ATP. These all are having phosphate as one of the component. So what is the source of this phosphorus? That is the phosphorus, that is rocks. Rocks contain phosphorus in the form of phosphate, PO4 3 minus. Okay, so they have phosphate. Okay. And this phosphate plays an important role in the cell, that is in our cell, the cell membrane, nucleic acids, energy, ATP is made up of phosphate. Okay. How this phosphorus is recycled? So whenever there is weathering of rocks due to various factors like wind, okay, due to various factors, what happens is whatever phosphate present in the rocks, it gets dissolved and reaches to soil solution. Here soil solution means whatever the water present in the soil, it is called soil solution. From soil solution, this phosphate is absorbed by plants. From plants, again, the phosphate reaches to the consumers. From plants, the phosphate reaches to consumers. Okay. Again, how phosphate will reach back to the soil by action of, that is, phosphate solubilizing bacteria on dead organisms. That is, by decomposition, again, phosphate reaches to soil. Whether it is decomposition of plants or animals, it reaches to the soil. Okay. So here you can see the phosphorus cycle. So whatever the rocks are present, by weathering, it reaches to phosphate, reaches to soil solution. By uptake, the soil solution, the plants will take this phosphate. From plants, it produces, it reaches to consumers. So whenever a plant or animal dies by decomposition, again it reaches to the soil solution. That is, whatever the nutrient cycle, the phosphorus cycling takes place, again by decomposition it reaches to soil solution. Okay. Here you can see inputs and loss of phosphorus at various stages. Okay. So here you can take the soil solution, which is nothing but water, to which you can see the inputs from various resources. Like by mineralization, which is one step in decomposition. So mineralization is one of the steps in decomposition. Okay. And here you can see that is the minerals which are primary minerals by weathering of rocks. So we can see the rock weathering. By weathering of rocks, it reaches to that is to the soil solution. By dissolution of secondary components, it reaches to okay. From minerals, by dissolution. Okay. Through fertilizers, through atmospheric deposition, it reaches to soil. Okay. So by various process, there is input into the soil solution. And at the same time, there is a loss from the soil. That is, there is a loss of phosphorus, like leaching, which is a very minor one, where it reaches to deeper layers of the soil during the decomposition process. The second step is during fragmentation, lot of minerals are lost. In this, phosphorus is also one of them. And runoff and erosion, due to runoff water and soil erosion, phosphorus is lost. And during during crop harvesting, lot of waste is generated, that is the crop harvesting, phosphorus is lost. Okay. So these are various components by which the phosphorus input can be seen and phosphorus that is lost from the soil. And here you can see there is from soil solution, plants will take, that is from the roots of the plants, the phosphorus is absorbed by the plants. So this is input and this is loss, and these are components. So by various means like weathering of rocks, by adding fertilizers, by decomposition, this all the phosphorus will reach us to soil. From soil it reaches to, from soil it has gone to, it goes to, that is the one which is the through plants, it goes to the what we call, the plants will take through the roots. From plants again it goes to, that is from plants if we take, again it goes to consumers. So when consumers die by decomposition process, again that is the by decomposition process, again it reaches to the soil solution. So this is how we can see the phosphorus movement in a soil, where in phosphorus cycle the soil is the reservoir, where we can see input, output as well as loss. Okay. Follow us SPSVERSITY on social media. Okay. So till now we discussed about, that is the nutrient cycling, which is also called biogeochemical cycles, and we discussed about standing state, standing crop, and we discussed the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle. So in, that is if you take this phosphorus, that is the, when you take the difference between phosphorus and carbon cycle. So phosphorus cycle, the loss is, we can see a loss is big one, but whereas in carbon cycle the losses are minimized. Okay. And in phosphorus cycle the inputs are very less, whereas when you come to carbon dioxide cycle there is inputs are lot. Okay. So nutrient cycling are biogeochemical cycles, so which play an important role in cycling of nutrients in an ecosystem. Okay. So finally we discuss about ecosystem services. What are these services? For the benefit of humankind, that is for the benefit of humankind, there are lot of services are done to them by ecosystem. Okay. Many processes are done in an ecosystem for supply to natural ecosystem. And these benefits which are taken, they are called ecosystem services. So the benefits which are done, it is called ecosystem services. Like one is decomposition of waste material, that is decomposition. Here you can see decomposition. That is the fragmentation, the leaching, catabolism, humidification, and next that is purify air and water. By purification of air and water, by photosynthesis, by various processes. Nutrient cycling, that is biogeochemical cycles. Whatever it be, carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur, water, nitrogen cycle, these are nutrients. Pollination of crops, maintain biodiversity. So these all are the services provided by ecosystem. So these all are services provided by ecosystem. So here you can see there are different services. Okay. So the diverse maintenance of diversity, the pollination, nutrient cycling, soil formation, decomposition, these all are services. And when you put these services into the price tag, when you put this into price tag, it is of roughly about US, that is dollars, that is $33 million, trillion dollars to perform fundamental ecosystem services. But ecosystem is, they are giving us for free. Such a costly thing it is giving for free. So here you can see the ecosystem services. Like you can see, that is ecosystem services in this, the regulating one, the water regulation, the climate regulation, natural hazard regulation, disease regulation, pure water, water purification, wastewater treatment. Provisioning energy, freshwater, capture fisheries. Cultural, that is recreation, ecotourism. And supporting services like nutrient cycling, primary production. So in this, if you take this services, that is the weathering, nutrient cycling, which occupy the major one, which occupy more than 10% of share. Okay. And remaining ones, that is if you take the pollination, these all which occupy 6, recreation, you can see roughly about 6%. So nutrient cycling, the what we call the weathering, which occupy the major, climate control, which occupy the major process. And remaining the provisioning, that is recreation, tourism, the pollination, these all are ecosystem services provided to humankind for the benefit of humankind. But what we are doing? We are harming the ecosystem. Maintenance of biodiversity, these all are services provided by the ecosystem for the benefit of humankind. And these services, when you take a price tag, it costs about the $33 trillion, which is very lot. Where ecosystem gives us free these services to us. So maintaining the integrity of ecosystem is very important to carry on this whole process. Otherwise, which leads to a lot of disasters. So that's why you should conserve our ecosystem. Thank you all of you for watching SPSVERSITY. Follow us on social media. Thank you all. We'll meet in the next session.